Sam never liked funerals. He stood at the back of the small crowd, watching as they lowered his grandfather's coffin into the ground. The rain was light, almost like a mist, and it made everything look gray and sad. His mother stood near the front, crying into a white cloth. His father held her shoulder and said nothing. Sam looked down at his shoes and waited for it all to end. After the funeral, the family gathered at his grandfather's old house on the edge of town. It was a big house, too big for one old man to live in alone. The paint was coming off the walls, the garden was full of wild grass and weeds. But inside, it still smelled the same way Sam remembered from his childhood. It smelled like old books and wood smoke, and something sweet he could never name. His mother walked through the room slowly, touching things, picking up old photos, and putting them back down. His father talked to the lawyer in the kitchen about papers and property. Sam did not want to be part of any of it. He walked upstairs to the room that used to be his whenever he visited as a child. The room was small. There was a single bed with a blue blanket, a wooden desk near the window, and a shelf full of dusty books. Sam sat on the bed and looked around. He had not been in this room for almost 10 years. He had stopped visiting his grandfather when he was 15. Life got busy. School, then college, then work. There was always a reason not to come. Now his grandfather was gone, and the reasons did not matter anymore. He opened the desk drawer, not looking for anything in particular. Inside there were old pencils, a rubber band, some coins, and a folded piece of paper. Sam picked up the paper and opened it. It was a note, written in his grandfather's shaky handwriting. It said only 3 words: "Find the key." Sam stared at the note for a long time. Find the key. What key? His grandfather had always been a strange man. He told stories that nobody believed. He talked about hidden places and secret rooms and treasures buried under the earth. Sam's mother always said he was just an old man with a big imagination. But Sam had always wondered if there was something more to his stories. He put the note in his pocket and went back downstairs. The house was getting emptier now. People were leaving, saying their goodbyes, shaking hands and hugging. Sam's mother came to him and said they would be staying at a hotel in town for the night. She asked if he wanted to come. Sam looked at the old house and said he would stay here instead. His mother gave him a strange look, but did not argue. That night, Sam was alone in the house. It was quiet in a way that city apartments never are. He could hear the wind outside and the creaking of the old wooden floors. He sat in the living room with a cup of tea and looked at the note again. He decided to search the house. He started in the living room. He checked behind the books on the shelf. He looked under the sofa cushions. He opened every drawer in the old cabinet near the fireplace. Nothing. He moved to the kitchen. He opened every cupboard, every tin, every jar. Nothing. He searched the dining room, the bathroom, and the small room his grandfather used as a study. Still nothing. It was past midnight when he went back upstairs. He was tired and ready to give up. He sat on the bed in his old room and looked at the ceiling. There was a small crack in the corner, near the light. He had never noticed it before. He stood on the desk and looked closer. The crack was not just a crack. It was the edge of a small panel, painted over many times to look like part of the ceiling. His heart started to beat faster. He used his fingers to pull at the edge of the panel. It was stiff, but it moved. A small square piece of the ceiling came loose, and behind it was a dark space. Sam reached his hand inside. His fingers touched something cold and metallic. He pulled it out. It was a key. An old brass key, heavy and worn, with a strange design on the end. The design looked like a tree, with roots going deep into the ground. Sam held it in his hand and felt a strange feeling in his chest. His grandfather had hidden this key here. He had left the note for someone to find. Maybe he had left it for Sam. But what did the key open? Sam looked at it from every angle. There were no words on it, no numbers, nothing that could tell him what lock it belonged to. He sat on the bed and thought. His grandfather's stories came back to him. The old man used to talk about a place deep in the woods behind the house. Sam always thought it was just a story, something his grandfather made up to entertain a little boy. But now he was not so sure. The next morning, Sam woke up early. The sun was just coming up, and the light through the window was golden and warm. He got dressed, put the key in his jacket pocket, and went downstairs. He made himself some coffee from the old supplies in the kitchen and stood by the back door, looking out at the woods. The trees were tall and thick. The path that used to lead into the woods was almost gone now, covered by grass and fallen leaves. Sam finished his coffee, took a deep breath, and stepped outside. The air was cool and fresh. Birds were singing somewhere high up in the trees. Sam walked across the garden and found the start of the old path. He pushed through the bushes and began to walk into the woods. The further he went, the darker it got, as the trees blocked out more and more of the morning light. He walked for about 30 minutes, following what was left of the path. Then he stopped. In front of him, half hidden by ivy and moss, was a large stone structure. It was about the size of a small shed, built from heavy gray stones stacked on top of each other. There was no window. There was only a wooden door, old and dark and covered with green moss. And in the middle of the door, there was a lock, a brass lock, old and worn, with a design around it that looked like the roots of a tree. Sam reached into his pocket and took out the key. His hand was shaking. He pushed the key into the lock and turned it. There was a loud click, and the door swung open slowly, letting out a rush of cold, stale air from inside. Sam stood at the entrance and looked into the darkness. And whatever was inside, his grandfather had wanted him to find it. Sam stood at the door of the stone room and waited for his eyes to adjust to the darkness inside. The air coming from within was cold and smelled like damp earth and something old, like the pages of a book left in the rain. He took a step forward, then another. The floor inside was made of flat stones, smooth and even. The walls were the same heavy gray stone as the outside. He pulled out his phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam of light cut through the darkness and showed him what was inside. The room was small, maybe 3 steps wide and 5 steps long. Against the far wall, there was a wooden table. On the table sat a metal box, square and rusted at the edges. Next to the box was a leather bag, old and cracked, tied shut with a piece of rope. And on the wall above the table, someone had carved words into the stone. Sam stepped closer and read the words. They said, "For the one who comes looking. The truth is worth more than gold." He felt a chill go down his back, and it was not from the cold air. He reached for the metal box first. The lid was stiff, but not locked. He opened it slowly. Inside there were papers, dozens of them, folded and yellow with age. He picked up the first one and unfolded it carefully. It was a letter, written in his grandfather's handwriting, but from many years ago. The ink was faded, but still readable. The letter was addressed to someone named Thomas. Sam did not know any Thomas in his family. The letter talked about a discovery, something found during a dig in the mountains to the north. His grandfather wrote about old tunnels, hidden chambers, and objects made of gold and silver. He wrote about keeping it all a secret because the wrong people were looking for the same thing. Sam put the letter down and opened the next one, and the next. There were more than 20 letters, all written to Thomas, all talking about the same thing. A treasure hidden in the mountains. A place his grandfather had found when he was a young man. A place he had kept secret for his entire life. Sam's hands were shaking now. He put the letters back in the box and turned to the leather bag. He untied the rope and opened it. Inside were objects wrapped in cloth. He unwrapped the first one. It was a small statue, no bigger than his hand, made of solid gold. It showed a figure of a woman, holding a bowl above her head. The detail was beautiful. Every fold of her dress, every finger on her hands, was perfect. He unwrapped the second object. It was a silver coin, larger than any coin he had ever seen, with writing on it that he did not recognize. The third was a necklace made of green stones that caught the light from his phone and sparkled like small fires. Sam sat down on the cold stone floor and tried to make sense of what he was seeing. His grandfather, the quiet old man who lived alone in a falling-apart house, had been sitting on what looked like a fortune. Not just money, but historical objects, things that belonged in a museum, things that could change the way people understood history. But why had he kept it all a secret? Why had he not told anyone? And who was Thomas? Sam put everything back the way he found it. He closed the box, tied the bag, and left the stone room. He locked the door behind him and put the key back in his pocket. He walked through the woods quickly, his mind racing with questions. When he got back to the house, he found his mother sitting in the kitchen. She had come from the hotel to start going through his grandfather's things. She looked tired. Her eyes were red from crying. Sam sat down across from her. He wanted to tell her everything, but something stopped him. Instead, he asked a simple question. "Mom, did Grandpa ever talk about someone named Thomas?" His mother looked up at him sharply. Her face changed. The sadness was still there, but now there was something else too. Fear, maybe, or surprise. "Where did you hear that name?" she asked. "I found some old letters," Sam said carefully. "In a drawer upstairs. Grandpa wrote them to someone called Thomas." His mother was quiet for a long moment. She looked out the window at the trees. Then she spoke slowly. "Thomas was your grandfather's brother." Sam stared at her. "Grandpa had a brother? You never told me that." "Because he never wanted anyone to know," she said. "They had a falling out, a terrible fight, many years before you were born. Thomas left the country and never came back. Your grandfather never spoke his name again. It was like Thomas had never existed." "What did they fight about?" Sam asked. His mother shook her head. "I do not know the details. Your grandfather refused to talk about it. All I know is that it had something to do with something they found together when they were young men. Something valuable. They disagreed about what to do with it, and it destroyed their relationship." Sam felt the weight of the key in his pocket. He was beginning to understand. His grandfather and Thomas had found the treasure together. They had fought over it, and his grandfather had hidden it away, keeping it secret from the world and from his own family. "Is Thomas still alive?" Sam asked. His mother shrugged. "I have no idea. Like I said, your grandfather cut him out completely. I tried to find information once, years ago, but I found nothing. He could be anywhere. He could be dead." Sam nodded. He finished his tea and told his mother he was going for a walk. He needed to think. He stepped outside and walked along the road that ran past the house. There were a few shops, a post office, and a church. Not much had changed since he was a child. He found himself walking to the local library. It was a small building with a green door and flowers in the window boxes. Inside, a woman with gray hair and glasses sat behind the desk. She smiled at him when he walked in. "Can I help you?" she asked. "I am looking for information about my family," Sam said, "specifically about a man named Thomas Reed. He would have been my grandfather's brother." The woman's smile faded just a little. She looked at Sam for a moment, as if deciding something. Then she nodded. "Come with me," she said. "I think I might have something for you." She led him to a back room filled with shelves of old newspapers and files. She pulled out a thick folder and placed it on a table. "Your grandfather's family has a long history in this town," she said. "I have been keeping records for over 40 years. I remember Thomas. He was a good man. Quiet, like your grandfather, but kinder somehow. Softer. She opened the folder and pointed to a newspaper clipping from many years ago. The headline read, "Local brothers make discovery in northern mountains." There was a photograph with it. Two young men stood in front of a rocky hillside, smiling proudly. One of them was clearly his grandfather, young and strong. The other looked very similar, but his face was slightly rounder, his eyes a little gentler. "That is Thomas," the woman said. Sam read the article. It talked about how the two brothers had been exploring old caves in the mountains and had found ancient objects. But the article was short and gave few details. It said the brothers planned to contact a university for further study. "What happened after this?" Sam asked. The woman shook her head slowly. "Nobody knows for sure. One day Thomas was here, and the next he was gone. Your grandfather told everyone that Thomas had moved abroad, but people in town had their own ideas. Some said they heard shouting from the house the night before Thomas disappeared. Some said they saw Thomas leave in the middle of the night with nothing but a small bag." Sam looked at the photograph again. Two brothers, standing side by side, not knowing that something was about to tear them apart forever. He thanked the woman and left the library. As he walked back toward the house, he made a decision. He was going to find Thomas. He was going to find out the truth about what had happened between the two brothers and why his grandfather had kept so many secrets. The key in his pocket felt heavier than before, as if it carried the weight of a story that had been hidden for far too long. Sam spent the next 3 days searching for Thomas Reed. He started with the internet, sitting at the old desk in his grandfather's study, using his laptop to search every database and social media platform he could think of. There were many people named Thomas Reed in the world, but none of them seemed to be the right one. He searched public records, old phone books that had been put online, and even immigration records. Nothing matched. On the second day, he called his father and asked if he knew anything. His father said very little. He told Sam that his grandfather had been a private man, and that some things were better left alone. Sam thanked him and hung up, more determined than ever to keep looking. On the third day, he went back to the library. The gray-haired woman, whose name was Helen, was happy to help again. She pulled out more old records and newspaper clippings. Together, they went through decades of local history. They found a mention of Thomas in a church record from the year he left town. It listed his forwarding address as a post office box in a city called Millbrook, about 4 hours north. Sam wrote down the address and drove there that same afternoon. Millbrook was a small city, bigger than his grandfather's town, but still quiet. The post office was on the main street, between a bakery and a hardware shop. Sam went inside and asked if they had any records for the name Thomas Reed. The woman behind the counter looked at him like he was crazy. She told him they did not keep records going back that far, and that the box had probably been closed decades ago. Sam walked out of the post office, feeling defeated. He stood on the sidewalk, looking up and down the street, trying to think of what to do next. Then he noticed something. Across the street, there was an antique shop. The sign above the door read, "Reed & Sons Antiques." His heart skipped. It could be a coincidence. Reed was not an uncommon name. But Sam crossed the street anyway and pushed open the door. A bell rang above his head. The shop was packed with old furniture, paintings, clocks, and shelves of small objects. It smelled like polish and dust. A young woman appeared from the back of the shop. She was about Sam's age, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and sharp brown eyes. She wore a simple sweater and jeans, and she looked at Sam with curiosity. "Can I help you?" she asked. "I hope so," Sam said. "I am looking for a man named Thomas Reed. He might have lived in this area a long time ago." The woman's expression did not change, but Sam noticed her hands tighten slightly on the counter. "Why are you looking for him?" she asked. "He was my grandfather's brother," Sam said. "My grandfather just passed away, and I found some things that connect them. I want to understand what happened between them." The woman studied his face for a long time. Then she said something that Sam did not expect. "Thomas Reed was my grandfather." Sam felt the world tilt slightly. He gripped the edge of the counter. "Your grandfather?" She nodded. "He passed away 2 years ago. But he lived here in Millbrook for most of his life. He opened this shop. My father runs it now, but he is out of town this week." She paused. "My name is Lily." Sam introduced himself, and they stood in the quiet shop, looking at each other like two people who had just discovered they were holding opposite ends of the same rope. Lily invited him to sit in the back room, where she made coffee, and they talked. Lily told him that Thomas had rarely spoken about his past. He had told her that he had a brother, but he never said the brother's name. He said that they had a disagreement that could not be fixed, and that he had chosen to start a new life far away. He had married a local woman, had a son, and built the antique shop into a successful business. He had lived a quiet, good life. But Lily said that sometimes, late at night, she would find him sitting alone in the dark, staring at nothing. She always felt he was carrying something heavy inside him that he could never put down. Sam told Lily about the stone room, the letters, and the golden statue. Lily listened without interrupting. When he finished, she went to a shelf in the back room and pulled down an old wooden box. She opened it and took out a single letter, yellow and fragile. "He kept this his whole life," she said. "It is the only letter he ever received from your grandfather. It arrived about 30 years ago." Sam took the letter carefully and read it. His grandfather had written that he was sorry, that he had been wrong, and that the treasure meant nothing compared to what he had lost. He asked Thomas to come home. He said the stone room was waiting, and that everything inside it belonged to both of them. "Did Thomas ever reply?" Sam asked. Lily shook her head. "No. I think he wanted to, but he was a proud man, and he was also afraid that going back would open old wounds that had taken years to close." Sam folded the letter and gave it back to Lily. He told her about the newspaper clipping, the photograph of the two young brothers standing in front of the mountains. Lily smiled sadly. "They wasted so many years," she said. "They did," Sam agreed. They sat in silence for a while, drinking their coffee and thinking about two old men who had loved each other and hurt each other and never found a way to fix it. Then Lily asked a question. "What are you going to do with the things in the stone room?" Sam had been thinking about this ever since he found them. "I do not know yet," he said. "But I think whatever I do, it should involve both sides of this family, your side and mine. It belonged to both of them." Lily looked at him with something close to gratitude. "I would like that," she said. Before Sam left, Lily showed him something else. In her grandfather's personal papers, there was a hand-drawn map. It was old and worn, drawn on thick paper with ink that had faded to brown. It showed the mountains to the north, with markings for caves and tunnels. One area was circled in red ink, with the words "Main Chamber" written next to it. "This is where they found the treasure," Lily said. "Thomas kept this map hidden in his desk for years. I found it after he died." Sam looked at the map and felt something stir in his chest. The stone room had held only a small part of what the brothers had found. The letters had mentioned much more. Objects of gold and silver, entire chambers full of ancient things. If the map was accurate, there was still much more hidden in those mountains. "Do you think the rest is still there?" Sam asked. "There is only one way to find out," Lily said. Sam looked at her, and she looked at him, and without saying the words out loud, they both understood what the next step would be. They were going to go to the mountains. They were going to find the place their grandfathers had discovered all those years ago, and they were going to do it together, the way Thomas and his grandfather should have done from the beginning. Sam drove back to his grandfather's house that night with the map spread out on the passenger seat. The road was dark, and the headlights cut through the blackness like two narrow beams of hope. For the first time since his grandfather's funeral, he did not feel sad. He felt something else entirely. He felt like he was finally moving towards something that mattered, something bigger than himself, something that two brothers had started a lifetime ago and left unfinished. He parked the car in front of the old house and sat there for a moment, looking up at the windows. Somewhere inside that house, his grandfather had carried his secret and his guilt for decades. But now the secret was out. The family was coming back together, and the story was far from over. Sam went inside, spread the map on the kitchen table, and began to plan. Lily arrived at the house early on a gray morning, driving a green truck with mud on the tires and a bag of supplies in the back. Sam was already waiting on the front steps with a backpack, water bottles, and the map rolled up in a cardboard tube. They looked at each other and nodded. There was no need for a long conversation. They both knew what they were doing and why. The drive to the mountains took almost 5 hours. The road started wide and smooth, but grew narrower and rougher as they went further north. The land changed around them. Flat fields gave way to rolling hills, and the hills rose higher until they became mountains covered in thick forest. The sky was heavy with clouds, and the air that came through the truck windows was cold and sharp. Lily drove while Sam studied the map. The markings his great-uncle had drawn were detailed but old. Some of the landmarks mentioned on the map, a fallen tree, a split rock, a river crossing, might not exist anymore. But the mountains themselves had not changed. The peaks and valleys matched what Sam could see through the windshield. They parked the truck at the end of a dirt road where the forest began. From here, they would have to walk. Sam put on his backpack. Lily took a smaller bag and a flashlight. They locked the truck and started up the trail. The trail was not really a trail anymore. It was more of a suggestion, a thin line through the undergrowth, where the trees were slightly thinner and the ground was slightly flatter. They walked in single file, pushing through branches and stepping over roots. The forest was alive with sounds. Birds called from high branches. Small animals moved through the leaves. Water trickled somewhere nearby. After about 2 hours of walking, they came to the first landmark on the map. It was a river, narrow but fast, running over smooth rocks. On the map, Thomas had drawn a line across it with the words, "Crossing Stones." Sam looked at the river and saw them. Large flat stones placed in a row across the water, too evenly spaced to be natural. Someone had put them there on purpose, a long time ago. They crossed carefully, one stone at a time, the cold water rushing around their feet when they slipped. On the other side, the forest was even thicker. They pushed on, following the map as closely as they could. The ground began to climb steeply, and soon they were breathing hard, pulling themselves up slopes, using tree roots as handles. Sam stopped to catch his breath and looked back. They were high up now. Through a gap in the trees, he could see the valley below, green and wide, with the river shining like a silver thread. It was beautiful, and for a moment, he forgot about the treasure and the family secrets and just stood there, taking it in. "It is amazing," Lily said, standing beside him. "It is," Sam agreed. They kept climbing. The map showed that the entrance to the caves was near a rock formation that Thomas had drawn as 3 large stones leaning against each other, like a broken doorway. Sam watched the landscape carefully, scanning every rock and cliff face they passed. It was Lily who spotted it. She grabbed Sam's arm and pointed. Up ahead, partly hidden by bushes and hanging vines, 3 enormous stones stood together, leaning inward at the top. They looked exactly like the drawing on the map. Between the 2 largest stones, there was a dark gap just wide enough for a person to squeeze through. They stood in front of the entrance and looked at each other. The excitement was real, but so was the fear. Nobody had been in these caves for decades. There was no telling what condition they were in. The tunnels could have collapsed. There could be water, or gas, or loose rock. It was dangerous, and they both knew it. "We go slowly," Sam said, "and if anything does not look safe, we turn back. No argument." Lily agreed. Sam turned on his flashlight and went in first. The gap between the stones opened into a narrow tunnel, just tall enough to stand in. The walls were rough natural rock, cold to the touch. The floor was uneven, with loose stones and patches of mud. The air was cool and still, with a faint earthy smell. They moved slowly, step by step, their flashlights swinging across the walls and ceiling. The tunnel went straight for about 50 meters, then turned sharply to the left. After the turn, it opened up into a wider space, a natural chamber with a high ceiling and walls that sparkled faintly in the light. Tiny crystals in the rock caught the flashlight beams and threw back little points of light, like stars. "This is incredible," Lily whispered. On the far side of the chamber, there were 2 more tunnel openings. Sam checked the map. Thomas had drawn arrows pointing to the left tunnel, with the words "Main Chamber" written above it. Sam pointed to the left and they continued. This tunnel was wider, but lower. They had to duck in places where the ceiling dropped. The floor sloped downward, taking them deeper into the mountain. Sam could feel the weight of the rock above them, pressing down. His heart was beating hard, but he kept moving. After another few minutes, the tunnel opened up again, and this time, Sam stopped so suddenly that Lily walked into his back. "What is it?" she asked. Sam could not answer. He just held up his flashlight and let the beam sweep across the space in front of them. It was a large chamber, much bigger than the first one. The ceiling was high and curved, like the inside of a dome, and covering every surface, lining the walls, stacked on natural stone shelves, arranged on the floor in neat rows, were objects, hundreds of them. Gold cups and plates, silver figures and jewelry, stone carvings with faces that looked both beautiful and strange, pottery painted in colors that were still bright after all these years, coins in piles, rings in small boxes, necklaces draped over stone. Sam moved his flashlight slowly across the room, trying to take it all in. It was not just a treasure. It was a collection, carefully arranged and preserved. Whoever had put these things here had done so with great care and intention. This was not a random hiding place. It was a storage chamber, built to keep these objects safe. Lily walked past him, her mouth open, her eyes wide. She knelt down beside a row of golden figures and touched one gently with her fingertip. "These must be ancient," she said softly. "Hundreds of years old, maybe more." Sam nodded. He was looking at the walls. Between the objects, there were markings carved into the stone. Symbols and shapes that he did not recognize. They were not letters from any alphabet he knew. They were something older, something from a time before writing as he understood it. "Our grandfathers found all of this," he said, "and they told no one." "Thomas told no one because he left," Lily said. "And your grandfather told no one because he was afraid." "Afraid of what?" Lily stood up and looked at him. "In one of the letters you found, did your grandfather mention anyone else? Anyone who was looking for the same thing?" He remembered a line from one of the letters. His grandfather had written about keeping it secret because the wrong people were looking. "Yes," he said. "He mentioned that someone else was searching for it." Lily nodded slowly. "My grandfather said something similar near the end of his life. He said that the reason he left was not just because of the fight with his brother. He said there were people, powerful people, who wanted what they had found. He said he left to protect the secret. He said if he stayed near his brother, it would be easier for those people to find both of them and everything they had discovered." Sam felt a cold feeling in his stomach. So the fight between them was not just about the treasure. It was about how to protect it. And how to protect each other, Lily added. Sam looked around the chamber again, at the gold and silver and ancient carvings, and he no longer saw just a treasure. A secret that had broken a family, separated two brothers, and haunted two old men until the day they died. And now that secret belonged to him and Lily. The sound of loose rock falling somewhere behind them made them both freeze. It was a small sound, a rattle and a slide, like a stone being kicked. It came from the tunnel they had walked through to get here. Sam turned off his flashlight. Lily did the same. They stood in the total darkness of the mountain, holding their breath, listening. Then they heard footsteps. The footsteps were slow and careful, like someone who knew they were in a dark and dangerous place and did not want to fall. Sam reached out in the darkness and found Lily's arm. He squeezed it once, a signal to stay quiet. She squeezed back. The footsteps got closer. Then a beam of light appeared at the entrance of the chamber, swinging left and right. Sam pressed himself against the wall, pulling Lily with him, behind a tall stack of stone carvings. The light moved across the room, catching the gold and silver and making them glow. A voice spoke. It was a man's voice, calm and low. I know someone is in here. I saw the truck at the bottom of the trail. There is no point hiding. Sam's mind raced. Who was this person? How had he followed them? He thought about the letters and what Lily had told him about powerful people searching for the treasure. His blood ran cold. The man stepped into the chamber. He was tall, wearing a dark jacket and hiking boots. He looked about 60 years old, with gray hair and a lined face. He held a large flashlight in one hand. His other hand hung at his side, empty. My name is Victor Hale, the man said. I have been looking for this place for a very long time. Sam stayed hidden, but Lily moved. She stepped out from behind the carvings and faced the man. Sam wanted to pull her back, but she was already standing in the open, her chin raised, her eyes steady. How did you find us? She asked. Victor looked at her without surprise. I have been watching the Reed family for years, both sides of it. When the old man died, I knew someone would eventually come looking. I just had to wait. He shone his light around the chamber, taking in the treasure with the calm expression of someone who had expected exactly this. Beautiful, is it not? I first learned about this place almost 40 years ago. A colleague of mine found references to it in old research papers. We spent years trying to locate it. Your grandfathers beat us to it. Sam stepped out now, standing beside Lily. What do you want? He asked. Victor smiled, but it was not a warm smile. It was the smile of a man who was used to getting his way. I am a collector, a private collector of ancient objects. I have clients all over the world who would pay enormous amounts for what is in this room. I want to make a deal with you. A deal, Sam repeated. Yes, you let me take what is here. In return, I pay you both more money than you would ever see in your lifetimes. You walk away rich, and nobody needs to know about any of this. Sam looked at the chamber. The gold caught the flashlight beams and glowed warm and beautiful. For a moment, just a moment, he thought about the money. He thought about what it could do. Pay off debts, fix the old house. But then he thought about his grandfather, sitting alone in that house for all those years, guarding this secret, losing his brother over it. He thought about Thomas, living in a different city, carrying the same weight. They had both chosen to protect these objects from people exactly like Victor Hale, and they had paid a terrible price for that choice. Sam was not going to throw that away. No, he said. Victor's smile faded. Think carefully, young man. You have no idea what you are turning down. I said no. These objects are not yours, and they are not mine either. They belong to history. They belong to everyone. Victor's face hardened. He took a step forward. You are making a mistake. I have resources you cannot imagine. Legal teams, connections, influence. If I cannot buy these objects from you, I will find another way to get them. You are two young people with no power and no protection. Do not make an enemy of me." Her voice was calm but firm. "We already know who you are, Mr. Hale. And by tomorrow, so will a lot of other people. Before we came up here, I sent copies of the map and the letters to 3 different people: a lawyer, a journalist, and a professor at the National University. If anything happens to us, or if anything goes missing from this chamber, the whole world will know about it, and about you." Sam looked at Lily in surprise. She had not told him about this. She caught his look and gave a small shrug, as if to say she had thought ahead. Victor stood very still. His jaw tightened. He looked from Lily to Sam and back again. For a long, tense moment, nobody moved or spoke. The only sound was the faint drip of water somewhere deep in the rock. Then Victor lowered his flashlight. "You are smarter than your grandfathers," he said quietly. "They just ran and hid. At least you know how to fight." He looked around the chamber one more time, letting his eyes rest on the gold and the carvings, and then he turned and walked back toward the tunnel. His footsteps echoed off the stone walls, getting softer and softer until they disappeared completely. Sam let out a long breath. His hands were shaking. Lily was shaking too, but she was smiling. "That was terrifying," she said. "That was brilliant," Sam said. "Did you really send copies to those people?" "Every word of it," Lily said. "I did it last night after you went to sleep. I had a feeling we might not be the only ones interested in this place." They stayed in the chamber for another hour, carefully photographing everything with their phones. They took pictures of the objects, the carvings on the walls, the symbols, and the layout of the room. They did not touch anything else. They documented it all, and left it exactly where it was. The walk back down the mountain was easier than the climb up. The clouds had broken apart, and sunlight came through in long golden beams that lit up the forest floor. Birds were singing again. The world felt different now, lighter somehow. They drove back to Sam's grandfather's town and went straight to the local police station. Sam told the officer on duty about Victor Hale, about his threats, and about the chamber in the mountains. The officer listened, took notes, and said he would pass the information to the regional authorities. Over the next few weeks, everything moved fast. The professor from the university came with a team of researchers. They went to the mountains with proper equipment and safety gear. What they found was described in the newspapers as one of the most important historical discoveries in decades. The chamber contained objects from a civilization that historians had only read about in old texts. Nobody had ever found physical proof of it before, until now. Sam and Lily were mentioned in every news story. They gave interviews and answered questions. Reporters wanted to know how they had found it. They told the truth, all of it. They told the story of 2 brothers who had found something extraordinary and been torn apart by the pressure of keeping it secret. They told it with honesty and with sadness and with love. Victor Hale was investigated. It turned out he had been involved in illegal trafficking of historical objects for years. With the evidence that Lily had gathered and the testimony from Sam and the police report, charges were brought against him. His network of clients and dealers was exposed. It was the end of a long, dark business. She walked through the rooms quietly, touching things the way she had done after the funeral. But this time, she was not crying. She was smiling. She told Sam she was proud of him. She said his grandfather would have been proud too. Sam was not sure about that. His grandfather had spent his life hiding the truth. But Sam liked to think that somewhere, in whatever place people go after they die, 2 brothers were sitting together again, the fight forgotten, the weight finally lifted. Lily stayed in touch. She came to visit often, and Sam went to Millbrook to see her. They became close, the way family should be. The antique shop kept running. The old house got a new coat of paint. The stone room in the woods was opened by the university team and turned into a small local museum. People came from far away to see the golden statue and the silver coins, and to read about the brothers who had found them. One evening, months after everything had settled down, Sam went back to the stone room alone. It was empty now. The objects had been moved to the university, but the carved words were still there on the wall. He read them again in the light of his phone. For the one who comes looking, the truth is worth more than gold. He stood there for a long time, in the quiet of the forest, with the evening light coming through the open door. Then he took the brass key from his pocket. He looked at it one last time, at the tree with roots going deep into the ground, and he placed it on the stone table where the metal box used to sit. He did not need it any more. The door was open now, and it would stay open. The secrets were out. The family was whole again, and the truth, as his grandfather had written, was worth more than anything that glittered in the dark. Sam walked out of the stone room, left the door open behind him, and went home through the trees, with the last light of the day shining golden on the path ahead of him.